Well, welcome everybody to the MAP session on Actualized Strategic Mission Elements of Anglican Church-Based International Student Ministry. My name is Leiton Chinn. I'm one of the co-directors of the new Anglican International Student Ministry Network. Now, you received this little bookmark about the AISMN. The Anglican International Student Ministry Network exists to mobilize, connect, and resource Anglicans to love, serve, and learn from international students and scholars. There are many ways to get involved in international student ministry. In the prior session, we heard from a couple as individuals doing it. In our session, we're going to look at examples from two Anglican churches and their involvement in international student ministry and how that involvement demonstrated and manifested all the rich infuse strategic elements of missions by doing global missions locally. Let's quickly review some of the strategic elements of international student ministry. International students from around the world are already among us. They are here and now. So there's no need to get a visa, to get your vaccinations, to buy a plane fare and go somewhere over there in the future. No, they're present and they're present tense. They're with us right now. This is one type of global missions done locally, also known as diaspora ministry, ministry among the foreign-born people that God providentially leads to come to our communities, to our campuses, and into our churches. Some come permanently, like refugees and immigrants. Many others come temporarily, such as students, business people. In the Washington, D.C. area, where we helped a church get an international student ministry started, we had diplomats there. International students are conversant in English, so there's no need that we need to be fluent in another language to relate with them, to establish our friendships and relationships with them. But it's helpful, of course, if we can learn a few of their common terms that they use in greetings or food or something like that. But they are conversant in English in order to come to our schools to study in North America. International students are curious to learn about our culture, and they would appreciate cultural mentors. And what's a cultural mentor? That's a native-born person who can befriend and just share kind of what life is like in the host country where the international student comes from. So no matter what region of the country you're from, you can introduce them to that regional culture. International students often are more open to learning about Jesus Christ while they are away from home, living abroad. They are students, they're going to learn a lot of things. They're going to learn about your culture, your history, and they may be curious to learn about your so-called religion. International students also are often or freer to consider Jesus Christ if they're away from a restrictive society or religion. We know a lot of international students come from so-called closed countries. Now, among our top 10 sending nations, number one is China. Okay? Most students come from China, but they're also very open, very curious to learn about Christianity coming out of a religious vacuum, atheism, or Chinese traditional religion. Number two, largest sending group of international students, India. Many are Hindus or other forms of South Asian religion. So China, number one. Number two, India. Number three, Korea. It's kind of somewhat Christian. Number four, Saudi Arabia. What a surprise. Saudi Arabia in recent years has really started to come. Even though the last year they kind of dipped a little, but they're still number four as far as top sending countries. And so you can see that we have students from the Muslim world, from the Buddhist world, from the atheistic or communist world as amongst our top 10 nations sending their students among us. Maybe they're from an unreached or unengaged people group, just like the countries that I just mentioned, a closed country. And also, international students are very appreciative of hospitality and a mutual cultural interactions. I don't know, have any of you lived abroad or at least been a tourist abroad?
Yeah.
Then you know what it's like to kind of learn, from those people, and they want to learn about our culture. So they appreciate a cultural mentor, kind of helping them through going through learning what it's like to live in this country. Of course, many international students are potential influencers and leaders professionally, whatever type of work they enter into after they complete their studies. Nation builders, like the person we heard this morning, that bishop from Africa, going back and wanting to do schools for young kids, but also at the collegiate level. Transformation agents. International students are trainable to be ready-made missionaries and ministers to their own people when they return home. I have here the name James Wong. He was an international student in Australia in the 1960s. He returned to Singapore and was one of the greatest church planters in Singapore. His son, Jonathan, is with us at this conference of New Wineskins. And Jonathan just told my wife and I last night, because he's assuming a leadership for Vietnam, but he was saying the church in Vietnam has told Jonathan to tell the church in North America, please receive our Vietnamese students. Vietnam is one of those countries that has just ascended last year in the top 10 sending countries, Vietnamese students. We got the word, tell our churches to receive their Vietnamese students. And finally, international students are cultural informants and instructors to advance mission awareness for mission agencies. We can learn a lot from international students about what the situation is in their country or in their part of the country, and that type of information can help in strategic planning for mission agencies and others sending short-term workers there. So these are only some of the strategic elements of international student ministry. Now, what about the strategic value for churches being engaged in international student ministry? Rectors and other leaders of the church like this first one. Getting involved with international students yields high fruit, very significant globally, yet at little or no cost. And of course, the reason being, most of the workers are volunteers of the church. And they bring the food to the potluck, and they provide so much. Some churches get to the point that they want to even give a little budget towards international student ministry in their outreach budget. So high impact, low cost, or as some say, big bang for the buck. Anyway, also there's tangible dimension of missions. We all know how we are encouraged to pray for missionaries, to give financial support, and also to provide member care for our missionaries. But people who get involved in local missions, such as international student ministry, have personal involvement. So they're not only supporting indirectly, you might say, although very important, through prayer and finances, but they get to personally get involved in global cross-cultural missions. All members can participate intergenerationally, from children to retirees. As you may have heard, international students, they come from maybe large families, and there's a lot of intergenerational relationships going on, so they appreciate youngsters, kids, grandparents, senior adults. And so it's not just for peer level, adult to adult or student to student ministry. It's the whole gamut of the church. So it's not only all ages, it utilizes all our variety of spiritual gifts and other gifts that God has given us. So everybody can get involved, and that's one of the reasons it's so highly strategic. You got all members that can be involved. It's not a special select few with a master's degree in cross-cultural training. Anyway, yes, and it's true. Many people who have desired to go abroad to be a missionary along the way, it didn't turn out to be that for them. But they can still be global missionaries at home, and oftentimes in their home. You have members that have lived abroad in the military like myself, business, missions, tourists, other students. They can use their cross-cultural experience or cross-cultural time abroad in ministering with international students. They can share those commonalities. International students are ready-made language and culture teachers for anyone going abroad from the church. I was in a McDonald's one day, and I saw this Chinese man and an American man, and they're talking. I thought, oh, that's great. The American, we encourage our church members to help international students improve their English. Oh, that's wonderful. Later to find out, I got it wrong. The Chinese was teaching the Americans some basic Chinese, because I guess that American was going to go to China. All right? But look, that's already made mentors you have in the church, the international students, to help prepare anybody from your church going abroad for whatever reason. Closely related to that, international students may provide a critical linkage for missions and ministry in their country to receive missionaries, and may open doors for missionaries and other ministry. I had a friend who met an African student who was a son of a chief, and my friend learned that Wycliffe Bible translators wanted to start their work with that tribe, and through the son of the chieftain, the doors were opened. Now, ISM, International Student Ministry, provides very rich pre-field cross-cultural experiences for those planning short-term missions or to be in long-term missions or anybody going abroad. It's the pre-field experience that you can learn before you go abroad. And that happened in our own church. Some of the people that were involved with us as volunteers later on God called into missions, and I'll share a little bit more about that as we go along in our examples. Many volunteers, well, this is it, many volunteers grow in missions involvement, and some may become missionaries. So those are a quick review of just some of the cultural elements involved in international student ministry. And now we're going to look at two examples. One very large church with over 1,000 members and a small church with about 50 members. So in the large church back in 1981, my wife and I were married at Truro Episcopal and Anglican Church in Fairfax, Virginia. Bishop Neil Labar married us. He's here at our conference. Some of you may know him. But Neil married us in 1981. In 1985, we approached our rector at that time, John Howe. Could we start a ministry to international students at nearby George Mason University, about 3 miles away? And he said to me, "Go for it." That's a quote. Go for it. That's all we needed, was the permission from the rector to say, do this. You know, anybody else wants to join you in this venture, go right ahead. And so we started Truro International Program and Services. And it was largely due to tips that our congregation really diversified in its ethnicity. Back in 85, Lisa and I would sit, look across, this is no exaggeration, 800 people in the pews. I couldn't count hardly 5, certainly less than 10 non-Anglos. And we were 2 of them. Anyway, that was back then, and now it's much more diverse. All right. The majority of our members that volunteered in our ministry numbered over the hundreds, and we ministered to over students from over 100 countries. We did things like a monthly potluck and program, English conversation or ESL classes, American culture classes, computer training, retreats, holiday hospitality, became host families and friends. We did Sundays at 6, a Sunday evening service by internationals and for internationals. And you'll see some of these. I'm just going through it really quickly. You'll see some pictures of all that I'm describing. Students have received Christ, been baptized, and some have returned home and served God in their home country. And again, several volunteers became missionaries. So we're going to look at some of the old pictures from 35 years ago. But this is a brochure that we developed for the students. We're described as a bridge of friendship with the American community. The students get the brochure. This is going to our students at George Mason University. Describe what we were, all the different activities that we provided, how they could get, how they could get involved. And then you can't see it, but these are all the different activities they did, and they would check off what their interest was. We have their contact information. We get in touch with them. Before we even developed this highly developed brochure, we just sent out kind of a basic information piece. And our very first event was at one of our friends' farms. We had about 70 international students come from all around Washington, D.C., not only George Mason University. All it takes is for people to come, enjoy themselves, have a great time, and they tell their friends. And how much time do I have left? 15 minutes has gone by. Impossible. Give me 5 more minutes because you're full of grace. Okay, so we're just going to look at some pictures real quick. So that we began, we had the roll call of nations, like 30 plus countries. And then this is another time, more countries, Afghanistan, Australia, etc., etc. Oh, this is way back when she had to draw all this stuff talking about culture shock, going through the entry. And that's my wife, Lisa, that's here. And just the main thing is having fun. We tell our people, look, just relax. Just get to know them. We have places for introverts, extroverts, and in between. To me, this is it. It's people, I'm about to cry, but it's people just getting acquainted. So, and that was the wife of this man. So you see, as a couple, they're just enjoying getting to meet students from all around the world. This is Maria from Ecuador. 20 or so years later, our daughter went to Ecuador as a study abroad student. Her family received our daughter in Quito, Ecuador. Amazing. Anyway.
She became a Christian.
And she became, thank you, Maria became a Christian through our ministry. This again goes back, like 35 years ago. He came as a high-ranking doctoral student or postdoctorate, major leader of the transportation department in China. So here he was 35 years ago, just maybe 4 years ago. We found him in Beijing. And we were able to introduce him to a Chinese Christian couple that could continue to just show God's love to them. Okay, these next 2 young men from Malaysia, he came as a believer, was one of our leaders, the next person as well. But these 2 guys from Malaysia, we just saw them a few months ago. We had a 30-something year reunion at our church. And so those are the 2 young men. Here they are, back. And this is another one from Malaysia. He and his wife from Wisconsin flew from Malaysia to join our little mini reunion. This volunteer is like a vice president now with Wycliffe Bible Translators, or one of their subdivisions. She was a graduate student in linguistics and part of our very first team when we started the ministry 35 years ago. One of the missionaries that came out of the ministry. This gentleman here was the head of the German Student Association. And the International Student Office asked him, when you go to that church, do they push religion on you? And he said, no, but it's there if we want it. Yeah, so good friend. And this is the one of our associate rector's wives, just enjoying that intercultural contact. He came as a non-believer from a Muslim country. She came from another Asian country. They met, he became a believer. They got married in our church. And now he has started a mission to his country that's several years old, and he has returned home. This was our Sunday school, International Sunday School. This couple became missionaries and went to Kazakhstan. Out of the Sunday school, there was a desire more than just Sunday school, but how can our Christian international students exercise their spiritual gifts? How do we provide an opportunity for them to minister besides just sitting in a pew and coming to our Sunday school class? So we started, and so after our Sunday school, we just go and have lunch together. But Okay. Here is this one of our baptisms. This lady here that you can't see is from Turkey. She's from Japan. She came to learn English at the English Language Institute of George Mason University. And this is our daughter that went to Ecuador, but this Japanese woman went back. She's translating the sermon from English. She has an American pastor in Tokyo into Japanese. She came to learn English, and now she's translating the sermons back in Japan. Another Japanese student that was baptized by our subsequent rector, Martin Mins, and he became a bishop, and I think was heading up GAFCON. And also, this is Sunday at 6, our evening service for and by Japanese students. We had a worship team. You only see 3 out of the 7 here from several countries. The leader of our worship team, Pepe Zubiera, came to America, not as a student, but any international we would welcome. Anyway, long story short, through serving as a worship leader, he went on to seminary, became a priest, went back to Bolivia. And then this is one of our volunteers. She went on to become a missionary and now is a rector at a church in Northern Virginia. Okay, my wife is saying my time has run up. Give me another 5 minutes. Okay, really quickly.
Okay, the recording has already ended, and it's really just 10 minutes for questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
this is international ministry. We have flexible time. Sorry. To those of you listening, write to me. I'll get all of this to you. Okay. Anyway, St. Matthew's Parish, 50 people on the average. 3 years ago at New Wineskins, their vestry members heard us in a seminar. Long story short, they invited us to their church. We talked about things. They said, how about inviting international students from a nearby University of South Carolina? They're outside of Columbia. Long story short, we started doing this. So you can, I'm not going to take time to read all the things we do because you're going to see it. So we invite students from the University of South Carolina, other schools in the Columbia area. Our people would pick them up. They'd come in the afternoon of Saturday, welcome them, then they say, enjoy all the natural things that you can do at our place there. We go fishing, kayaking, and several of the Chinese students had never fished in their life. And look at this, catching a nice big fish. And then also one of the members has a plane and a private grass airfield, so they took them up flying. And see the Chinese student there. And then we would have cross-cultural training for them. That's Lisa teaching them about cross-cultural entry shock. And then that's another time with teaching again about culture. And then we'd have dinner. And then we would teach them the official South Carolina dance, the shag. And then people learning the shag, just having a lot of fun, get them tired so they can have a nice, good night's sleep with their host family. And the next morning, come to the service, our rector, Janet Echoes, will do a very simplified liturgical guidance for them. And here we're singing Happy Birthday to a European student. This student became adopted by one of the members of that small church. You can read about her testimony in the articles that I just passed out to you at another time. But her testimony is in there. And then we have a lunch after church. This is a Muslim student. And then during the time of the lunch, the students get to share what the weekend meant to them, and the hosts get to share what the weekend meant to them. Here's a Chinese student sharing I love it, the look. She's sharing under the cross. It's so hard to say goodbye after 24 hours. It's amazing what God does. Well, 2 years ago, we formed this thing called the Anglican International Student Ministry Network. This was our first gathering at another conference for international student ministry. We had 18 people from a number of churches. Please sign up your name. We'd love to send you information about events. We like to pray together, hear what God is doing. If you have questions about starting a ministry, anything. If you all want to be connected through this network of Anglicans involved in international student ministry, please sign the paper there. And also, here's my email, Leiton Chinn at AOL.com. Write to me. I've got a lot of resources. Love to share with you. I've been doing this for 40 plus years, and it's been great. To God be the glory. Thanks so much.